Yesterday morning, I usually in the morning I would walk around our wetlands at Lake California, and yesterday I was walking in the rain, and that's how I felt. It was just lovely, just to have all those sprinkles raining on me. And then I was thinking of all the people at the Coram Ranch at the Congregational Retreat, how much fun that must be out there for them too. All right, compassion in action. Might not have been the hot topic you were looking for, but that's the title of the talk. And Ernest Holmes, who wrote the Science of Mind text that is our text, taught that compassion is really spirituality in motion, and that when we take steps in a compassionate way, when we take compassionate action, that has this ripple effect that goes out, and we never really know how far it goes. It could go to people that you will never meet or never know of. It can end up on somebody's emotional response on Facebook. But what I know about compassionate action is that whatever we do, it eventually ends up in love. It eventually turns into something that feels like love. And so what does that look like? Well, it could be a smile, somebody who's feeling down and you just smile at them. It could be smiling to a stranger. It could be listening to someone without comment. It could be a hug or just a pat on the back when somebody's having a difficult time. And it could be a laugh, a really good laugh in the moment where the tension is just so high. So the thing about compassionate action is it's not expecting anything in return. We're just in the present moment. We're doing this out of love, and it generates more love. In the past few weeks, we have had more people coming into the center than I ever remember. Some saying, my therapist told me I had to come here, I don't know why. And then we sit down and they said, and what do you believe and what do you do? And we tell them and we show them around. But there were a couple of gentlemen that came in this past week that was very challenging. They drove out from Virginia. They're long retired military men, vets. Rented this Penske truck, so if you see the truck in our parking lot soon, you'll know they're still around. They put all their belongings in this Penske truck and drove from Virginia to Redding based on a scam that this realtor was going to help them find a ranch and they could stay with them. And then the other scam that ended up happening is they came back after a few days and said, we need to get our money transferred out of there to here. Can you help us? And I said, well, of course. Let me know who to call. And he said, well, here it is. It's $11 million from a Facebook email or an email about a bank in Nigeria. I'll tell you, it just broke my heart. They've been sleeping in this van for days. And I took him to the mission, and the mission welcomed them with open arms. Hey, we got 3 meals a day and a place for you to stay. And that's the goodness that's in our community everywhere we look. And then they came back and they said, there's a lot of preaching at the mission about hell and damnation. And we couldn't take it anymore, so we came back here because they had belonged to a church, Science of Mind Church, previously. So that's why they even came to our center. So anyway, we helped them find a possible place to live. And, your heart just goes out to people like that. This was the last hurrah. And somehow, because they had been in this teaching and they drove around Redding looking for this guy that was never going to appear, and they saw our sign. So it's interesting during the week who we serve, and we do it with compassion, with joy, with kindness. And like I was telling Paul, I have to do it with boundaries. We don't have piles of money to give you. We don't have places where you can sleep. No, you can't park in our parking lot all night. And those boundaries, they're important. They're really important. So anyway, I want you to know that we've been pretty busy these past couple of weeks, and it's been fun, lots of fun. But the things that we do with compassion is we have our bins in the hallway to collect food for the People of Progress Food Bank, the HIV Food Bank. And this week, the new manager of People of Progress called, and she said, you guys are amazing. We delivered 385 pounds of food to them this week. That's huge. And it's because of you. It is. It's just amazing. And then one day a month, we're one of many churches in Reading that follow the Hope Van, which gives medical assistance to the homeless. And we have a team that provides warm food once a month for that. And we provide personal items, clothing to people in progress, and the Hope Van. Then we have our Shoes for Souls program for the homeless and the very poor, and that's through Living Hope Ministry, a really fantastic place. So we encourage this kind of compassionate service here. We really do. And we ask that whatever you do with a loving heart. I like the saying, we don't go faster than the feeling of love. If we're not feeling love, don't do it. You don't want that energy to go with anything we're doing. So whether you're mowing the lawn or helping in the office or helping deliver the food, it's to be done with a sense of love. We have a wonderful brochure, and there are more of them out on the desk in the foyer, about our 17 different Save It teams. And if you aren't on one, I really encourage you, because it's really good for your body, your mind, and your soul. That kind of giving without expecting anything in return. You know, Gandhi said, "Let our life be our message." And it's good words to live by. But this week, Compassion in Action, I have quite a library at home, and I pulled this book off the shelf. It's called Compassion in Action. Stepping out on the path of service by Ram Dass and Mirabai Bush. If you know Ram Dass, I mean, he's just a guy that you dearly love. And because of his long journey into compassionate service. In chapter 1, he writes, compassion's a paradox. It's accepting that everything is happening at exactly the right minute while being fully committed to changing it now. It means we set goals, but it's really the process that's important, not the goals. It's being joyful and hopeful in the face of overwhelming odds. It's seeing simplicity in a world of complexity and confusion. Compassion in Action is done for others, but really what it does is nurture ourselves. And he says, compassion in action is intended to eliminate suffering while we know suffering is endless. That's the paradox of compassion. So it's important, he says, to remember that regardless of what we see happening, regardless of what is happening, this world is a sacred place, a very sacred place. And knowing that, contributing to the world is really a blessing in action. But he says it's important to do it lightly, to do it gently, because we can do it with our egos and get her done, but it's not done with love. If we get depressed or angry about situations in the world, whatever we're doing, we're not contributing. It's important to contribute love. But it also means, thank goodness for me, that I don't overload myself with so many things to do, because then I'm not serving my spiritual growth. Because the truth is, the universe is unfolding perfectly. And that is the heart of our teaching, because it's all God, all spirit in action. Ram Dass, and he has written many books. This one is in the bookstore if you are interested. It's his journey of awakening. And in the 60s, he started to get involved in social action. And he said, but I went to all these rallies, and all the people yelled was, these are the good guys, those are the bad guys, we got to do something now, now, now. And he's got, wait a minute, we're all one. Where's the oneness in this? Where is it? So we often wondered about that, and he mentioned in the book, how could people so easily forget what Martin Luther King was saying? Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. So in 1978, sounds like a long time ago, Ram Dass and Mirabai, in their stories in here, were invited to a conference of people who were devotees of Neem Karoli Baba, also known as Maharaji. The purpose of the meeting was said, we're going to start a nonprofit dedicated to the alleviation of suffering in the world. Big topic, big topic. Now, the leaders of this meeting had previously served a UN World Health Organization program to eradicate smallpox, and they were very successful at it. So now that was done, they were ready to take on something else big, but they weren't sure what it should be. So they invited Maharaji devotees to come. And, Ram Dass studied for years with Maharaji, and the stories are delicious. If you have read any of them, they're just amazing, where he learned again and again and again and again from Maharaji. Ram Dass, do everything in service, love everyone. He must have heard that 1,000 times. And when he came back to the United States, he finally had embodied that. So he was looking forward to this meeting. But for Mirabai, she also had studied with Maharaji, but she didn't really know any of the other people. But the topic of alleviating suffering entranced her, intrigued her, but she felt very out of place. She walked into the first meeting, and here are all these men in three-piece suits, and all these other men and women in sweatshirts and sweatpants. And then there was this guy with a day-glow beanie on his head with a propeller. And she felt very uncomfortable. And when the meeting started, it snowed. This was in Michigan. It snowed, and they were stranded for 3 days. Nobody could leave. And she said it was a real blessing because they had to get over their reactivity to one another. They had to really settle into this oneness, like, are we going to do this as a group or what? So many ideas were put forth, and they talked for hours and hours and hours, and here's the result. We are going to have a campaign to eradicate preventable and curable blindness in the world. Eradicate preventable and curable blindness in the world. Whoa, that's huge. At that time, 80% of the blindness in the world was preventable or curable. Over 20 million people in the world were experiencing blindness. Now that's a heck of a Seva team to cure all that. So guess what they named their organization? Seva. Seva, which is what we do here. So they did a big survey, where should they start? And it became obvious. The conclusion was Nepal, the poorest country in the world. 200,000 people were already blinded there by cataracts, and 25,000 new cases showed up every year. Now, how do you feel about that if you're on that team? We're going to do this. Mirabai found her niche in this campaign is fundraising, and she worked with the World Health Organization. And once they started promoting their Seva campaign, donations started coming in. And one of the first donations, $5,000, was from Stephen Jobs before he became famous. Didn't know, but he had studied with Maharaji also. In fact, in his biography, Becoming Stephen Jobs, it begins with his participation in one of these early Seva meetings with the craziness and all that, and it says he was with spiritual leader Ram Dass, public health hero Dr. Larry Brilliant, counterculture icon Wavy Gravy, he was the one with the beanie, and Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead. What an eclectic group. They're going to cure blindness. So it said in the book, it was quite the collection of Hindus, Buddhists, rockers, and doctors. Mirabai wrote that in the first 5 years, she really got discouraged. Can you imagine bringing that kind of group together? Because she said every one of the people created their own self-imposed deadlines of what their task was to do. Of course, your deadline would match my deadline because I'm going to do it faster, better, whatever. And she said everybody went into their safe role and no one rocked the boat. And so several times she would say, I can't take this anymore, I'm resigning. We're to be doing compassion in action, and we're not. So the group would go into this deep reflection like, oh dear, how can we get there as a group? So they would spend hours in self-examination. And then they would convince her to stay. And during this time, Wavy Gravy would come to every meeting with Groucho Marx glasses. And he would put them on, and anyone that said the word serious, you had to wear the glasses. No one was to take themselves too seriously. So eventually, through all this, you got to form a cohesive group, and they did. And so the next time Mirabai said, I can't take this anymore, I'm resigning, they said, okay. So she stayed. What became very clear to them was this wasn't about the people and the blindness. This was about their individual spiritual development, their path on their own spiritual development. That's what it was about. And at some point, all the control issues went away. They started trusting one another. And, as Buddha said, if your compassion does not include yourself, you're going up the wrong tree. You're just not complete with it. We have to do it for ourselves also. And so that's what's important here today, because being part of a Seva team supports your spiritual path. It can alleviate frustration in areas of your life when you start trusting life, start trusting this personal evolutionary path. So after 8 years, Mirabai wrote that they had not caught up on the 200,000 cases backlogged in Nepal, but they had made great headway. And they went into more deep self-examination. And what they found out was they had to let go of their 1960s mentality. Hey, we're here to save the world, let's do it tomorrow, we'll fix it. That fix it quick mentality. And they had to embrace a new way, which was called be here now. Be here now. Just be present with it, whatever's happening. At the end of 12 years, there was still a backlog in Nepal, but they had built a very, very strong infrastructure, and it was in solid place. So we're fast forwarding to 2016, and I downloaded their annual report, 38 years after they started. And it's the Seva Global Site Initiative Network. And it's grown to over 90 hospitals in Nepal, India, Guatemala, Peru, Tanzania. And that year, they provided almost 900,000 people with eye screenings and exams. They restored the sight of almost 63,000 people through cataract surgery. They provided 32,000 with sight-saving medicine, 38,000 people with eyeglasses, and trained over 4,000 doctors, nurses, health workers, and volunteers. Now that's success. Incredible success. And Be Here Now was good for them because it took 38 years, but that's all right. The Tao Te Ching asks, do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself? So what is your gift of service for your personal spiritual development? It could be here at the center, out in the community, regionally, nationally, internationally. Here in Redding, like a lot of cities, the homeless situation it's always in the papers. People are always complaining about it. It's a really, really difficult thing to resolve. And if you spent any time with Shirley McQuiston and Bill in the kitchen, she's a dog lover. She sends all these wonderful things on Facebook about dogs that have been saved and healed and loved. And recently she came to me and she said, Mary, I want to do something for the homeless, but sometimes I can't handle doing things for the homeless, but I worry about their dogs. Can we do something to help their dogs? I thought, whenever I was at the Hope Van dishing out food or shoes to the homeless, about 1 in 10 or 15 had a dog. And I found out that that's about the national average, 10 to 15%. And I always wondered about that. Where do they get their shots? Do they get dewormed? Do they get rid of, how do you get rid of fleas if you're homeless, and you're sleeping all over the place? And so when she asked me about that, I remember watching these people, and those dogs were their companions. They were their security, because there's a lot of a lot of stealing in the homeless camps, and it gave them a lot of love. So I started Googling. That's where I go for my problem solving. And it was only in a few minutes I went, oh my God. Guess what? There's a website called Feeding the Pets of the Homeless. It's a national organization that operates in 26 states. It's based in Carson City, Nevada. They have 453 donation sites for pet food for pets of the homeless. And last year, thanks to monetary donations, they held 91 wellness clinics around the country where you could get your dog shots, you could get them dewormed, they even, in their annual report show, when a dog got run over by a car, they even paid to have his leg amputated and returned to the owner. So this is an incredible program that I had no idea even existed. So I ran this idea by our board and many of our leaders, and they were supportive. My husband, not so much. He's a cat man, but he said, wait a minute. There's more things to help in this world than pets of the homeless. But then I thought, the homeless problem is so big, if we can allow them to continue to receive love and companionship from their pets, how nice is that? And of course, anytime I run into a dog or a cat lover, of course this would be a wonderful program. So guess what? We're going to get it organized. And you'll see another bin in the hallway for animal food, pet food, dog food. Now, this organization is very careful with every dollar that's donated, and they screen everything that each donation site does, but they will give us press releases, public service announcements, monthly newsletters. They will call our local media and tell them about this new site in Redding, donation site. So I'm feeling very good about it, really good about it. And I think Ernest Holmes and Maharaji and Ram Dass and Steve Jobs would be very pleased with what we're doing here at the center. And you know, when we give support to our parent organizations, Centers for Spiritual Living, they have a whole global services program. And I see Barbara here this morning, and her center in the Ukraine receives some of those global services, and Barbara helps with that a lot. We're glad to have you back, dear one. Yeah. So we have a clear connection to global services, and each center is invited to participate however we do. But our SEVA teams here are truly spirituality in motion. You know, every time I take baskets of shoes to Living Hope Ministry, Billy Jo, she's the office manager, she looks at me and she says, do you know how much we love you? And it makes me want to cry just now. And I said, Billy Jo, the work you do for the homeless, I'll tell you how much we love you. It's just so sweet. And Barbara Bella, last year she knitted 27 scarves and hats, her and her neighbor, and I took them to Living Hope, and I said, these are for the homeless. So she put them in a cabinet. It was around Christmas time, and anyone who came in, she says, are you homeless? And they would say yes, and she would sort through and get the best scarf and hat that matched their coat. It was so sweet. And Barbara told me after the 9 o'clock service, I've already got 40 sets done, and maybe we can invite people to contribute gloves also this winter. Very sweet. So it doesn't get better than that, really, on the local level. And I'm going to feel really awesome when I see healthy dogs walking around Redding supporting their homeless owner. So I encourage you to take a brochure and choose a team that's right for you. And I want to close with the words from Meister Eckhart, who Ernest Holmes studied deeply, and I had never read this before, but it's very sweet. If I were alone in a desert and feeling afraid, I would want a child to be with me. For then my fear would disappear and I would be strong. This is what life in itself can do because it's so noble, so full of pleasure, and so powerful to be with a child. But if I could not have a child with me, I would like at least to have a living animal at my side to comfort me. Therefore, let those who bring about wonderful things in their big, dark books that we study take an animal to help them. The life within the animal will give them strength in return. For equality gives them strength in all things and at all times. So let's pray about that. Oh. In this moment, the tenderness that is shown by everyone in this congregation to the people who value our support is just so touching. It's so touching to know that every can of food, every scarf, every pair of shoes finds a home with someone who is so grateful, very, very grateful to receive it. As we embark on a new Save a project with Pets of the Homeless, I know that this not only will generate a lot of contributions, but it will generate joy and happiness from those homeless who love their pets so dearly. So the next time we see them walking around town, yeah, it's homeless, but look at that dog. He's healthy. He's fed. He's loved. So these are the gifts we give from our heart. And it does help on our spiritual path. It does help us move forward in compassion, move forward in love. And for all these gifts, we are so grateful. Thank you, Spirit, for all those who have gone before us, eradicating blindness in the world, and we help the homeless in Redding. But it's all one. It's all important. And for that, we are so grateful. And so it is.